Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont. And as of this December, I've been married a year now. That got me thinking, because I'm a completely normal person, which of the Souls characters would make the best spouse? Actually, I've been living with my wife for quite a few years, but when it comes to marriage, that does change things up a bit. People get pretty attached to the Souls characters, but what would it be like to live with them, to have that married life, really? Take Priscilla from Dark Souls, for example. A lot of people got infatuated with her back in the day, but I can't really imagine that being an ideal living scenario, you know? For one thing, she's like 13 feet tall, getting through doors, having a proper sized bed, standing up without hitting your head. And if that is fur, not clothes, on her body, she would probably shed like crazy. Imagine owning 10, what are they called, Malamutes? Can she work? Does she have the capacity to work? Would she just go invisible and steal what she needs? Does she even need to eat food? Would she get hunted by people who mistake her for Bigfoot? Indeed, these are the sorts of things you've got to ask yourself before you brazenly proclaim things like, oh, that's my waifu. If we look at the Souls games, and Elden Ring and all that, we do see some characters who aren't just in relationships, but married. Marika married Godfrey. Radagon married Renala. Gwyn presumably had a wife or two, given all his kids. Guinevere was married to Flame God Flan. Vendrick married Nishandra. Now, of the marriages we're aware of, it's questionable how many of them were happy. Vendrick and Nishandra had quite a situation going on. For example, Vendrick kind of made a sword out of Nishandra. Actually, that's not true. He didn't make a sword out of Nishandra. He made a sword shaped like Nishandra, as you do. Marika and Godfrey's is perhaps one which had some seemingly genuine love, or at least Godfrey seems to view Marika with a lot of genuine affection. Marika, hard to figure out. She did kind of strip him of his immortality and banish him, but my impression was that she did care for Godfrey. Still, look at Godfrey, having a spouse who is a good 10, 12 feet tall, has a magical line strapped to his back that stops him from going on a murder rampage. He could be difficult to live with, let's be real. Even though Godfrey does seem like a pretty good dude, all around. And there's some obvious options for those to avoid. Look at Shiva of the East, for example. He'd probably slice you up because he's nuts. Patches wouldn't be as bad as I think most people would assume, but he would certainly be the sort of person who locks you out of the house and laughs at you now and then, especially if you have like the smallest spat. Definitely not someone you'd want a joint account with. He'd be like, oh, you haven't worn that sweater in 2 days. I thought you didn't want it anymore, so I sold it. And then you're like, how much did you sell it for, Patches? And he's like, £20? And you're like, right, can I have half of that? And he's like, ugh. But then later you find out you actually sold it for like £50. He's a rascal. Likewise, Lucatiel would be no good because she'd forget everything, including you. What about everyone's favourite sunbro, Solaire? I mean, you'd think he'd be a good pick, right? He's helpful, polite, he's friendly. You can tell there's passion there too, but you run the risk of him leaving you to run after someone more incandescent. And he's not the most careful guy in the world. He'd probably be kind of accident prone, or at the very least, susceptible to scams. You know, if someone came to the door, he opened it and they were like, hey, I'm selling the sun. Solaire would be like, here's all of the money. And conversely, you have characters like Egon from Dark Souls 3, who would probably take good care of you, but be an asshole about it all the while. Plus, he has a weirdly close relationship with his sister. Not creepy, but enough to be overbearing. But all of this begs the question, what makes up the ideal spouse? And that is a very deeply personal thing, because whilst there will be some common traits, no doubt, it is at the end of the day going to vary depending on who you are and what you want in life. But you know, Millicent and Oswald strike me as decent candidates here. They're both independent enough not to need to lean on someone like a crutch, but they would also probably accept help when it was needed. Both are competent and driven in their goals, be it punishing the guilty or discovering the truth about their stinky heritage. Millicent might have an arm fall off around the house and you might need to get her a lot of skin cream. Oswald he might judge you if you start buying, I don't know, junk food. Maybe he's a bit too dogmatic, eh? But it seems like he'd always accept an apology. Look at that welcoming stance. And isn't that what you really want from a partner? Someone who will forgive you, even if you have to give them a lot of souls in the process. Of course, I asked you guys what you thought, alongside my friends, and I got some very interesting answers. Please do share more of them in the comments, as they are equally terrifying and fascinating. One of my friends brought up that a lot of Dark Souls 2 NPCs are merchants, in a way. So at least they could bring in some money, like Morlin and whatnot, without resorting to murderizing. But at the end of the day, perhaps the best answers, in my opinion, are Sieglind of Katarina and Dommel of Xena. Lyn is loyal, driven, strong enough to protect herself and extremely brave, very genial and polite, and obviously cares a lot for her family. And I'm not just saying that because my wife is also a Lyn, that's just purely coincidence. Dommel, well, he's about the most polite person you'll meet. He can clearly make a living selling and finding trinkets, but that doesn't really drive him to obsession either. Sure, he's not very powerful, but that's not that important, right? As for runners-up, what's her name? Rhea from Elden Ring, the snake lady, for sure. Alsana and Lenigrast from Dark Souls 2, maybe. Family-oriented types, clearly. Hard to find faults with them outside of Alsana being a manifestation of darkness, and Lenigrast looking stinky and green. But really, there's so many NPCs, we'd be here for like an hour if I went through every single one, listing their pros and cons, as amusing as that might be. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. And until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.